It's Connor Tait on another episode of Tait Talks NBA podcast. Another edition of the quarantine version of the podcast. In other words, lack of news, because obviously there's no sports going on right now. However, there's a few things that I still can talk about on today's episode. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the XFL, and I've got news today from sources that most likely it will be postponed at least for the 2021 season. There's been layoffs in major departments, coaches, training, everything like that. They've suspended operations altogether, and most executives have pointed in talking towards no play in 2021, no season in 2021, unlike what they said originally, where they'd come back stronger next year. I think it's really just unlucky for the XFL. You know, they were actually starting to pick up speed as teams were getting better, players were getting better, and then this just hit them. You know, it's different than the first time. The first time they just failed. No one wants to watch it, but this time people actually were watching. People were getting into it, and then this freak accident happens, and it really hurts them. I mean, they haven't said they're going to be canceled forever, but it looks like they're at least going to have to take another year to maybe build up funds or do whatever they have to do to be able to come back in 2022, maybe. Next, in NFL news, Brandon Cooks was traded to the Texans for a couple of picks. I think that's an interesting trade for multiple reasons. I think, it's good for the Texans. It would have been better if they were adding him along with DeAndre Hopkins. Unfortunately, we know that's not the case. Essentially, what's happened is they traded DeAndre Hopkins for Brandon Cooks and David Johnson, which, some could say that's a fair trade. It really depends on how Cooks and Johnson play. I think both are a little bit on the end of their career path, except for Cooks. Cooks still has a little bit, but he does get hit with the injury bug a little every once in a while. But I think with Deshaun, he could be a really nice piece. But I still think that they were better off keeping Hopkins. And I think the big reason that I think this Cooks trade is a bit interesting is because this draft class, as you probably know, is full of young, talented, physical receivers. From Jerry Jeudy to CeeDee Lamb to Ruggs, they cover all the boxes. I think personally what I would have done is traded for a pick, maybe a mid to late first, and tried to grab one of the higher receivers. You might not get Jeudy, you might not get Lamb, but Ayuka could fall to you, or Ayuk could fall to you, or Ruggs could fall to you. And then not only do you get that receiver, I mean, there is a question mark on their true potential, but you get a young, receiver who can come out and grow on your team. Because with Cooks, you know what you're getting, which some people could view as a positive, some as a negative. But I think it's interesting because now, obviously, I mean, they still could draft a wide receiver, but to me, all signs point towards drafting a defensive player. Whether it's a defensive lineman or a linebacker or a defensive back, I'm not sure, but in the trades in the offseason they've picked up a running back in David Johnson, a wide receiver in Cooks. They're establishing a deal with Tunsil. They could go lineman again, but to me it points towards them drafting a defensive player, maybe a guy out of LSU, something like that. On other NFL news, the NFL draft is coming up. That'll be interesting. Around the 23rd through 25th of April is the draft. Not sure how they're going to do that. It'll be interesting to see. I think the first two picks are pretty mapped out. It'll be Burrow and Chase Young, but after that, it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens. Where Herbert goes, where other big names like that'll go, who will trade up. Tua, where's he going to go? I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens. In NFL free agency, Jadeveon Clowney still has not been signed by a team, and I think it's because he wants too much money. I think teams see that he doesn't produce numbers-wise the way that people want him to. I think, although seeing him play on both the Texans and the Seahawks, I think what you get out of Clowney is not necessarily the numbers, which obviously is valuable, but you get a guy who's pressuring the quarterback almost every play and is a monster in the run game. I don't think he's worth what he's asking for, unless he can produce the numbers. I think his price is dropping, but I would love to see him back in Seattle. I mean, Russell Wilson has specifically talked about wanting him back for a title run, Super Bowl run. I think it would be awesome. I think it's a piece that the Seahawks could use. I think it's a piece that almost any team could use. I mean, except for, the Niners don't really need him, but I think almost any team could try and sign him, and he'd be very valuable. But I think I would love to see him on the Seahawks again. Over to football or soccer. Liverpool winning the Prem, I have written down here. I think looks like they still will be given the title unless, given that they don't resume play. If they don't resume play, they'll still receive the title is what it looks like, because a few executives are speaking out and saying that it would be very surprising if Liverpool doesn't get the title. One former player in Rio Ferdinand said that they shouldn't get the title, but I disagree with that, because I think if it was a closer battle, say Liverpool's only 5 points ahead, then you'd still want them to win, but it makes more sense for them not to. But when you're so far ahead like they were, it's almost a crime to take that from them. I think, but who knows? Maybe they'll resume and they'll win it legit. Next, on to the NBA. There's a lot of talks right now of the NBA season possibly being canceled, and Adam Silver has talked about trying to get an agreement with the players' union to cancel the rest of the season and resume later. Possibly, I've heard talks of possibly starting in December. Players have spoken out about it. LeBron has said a few things. He didn't really give a clear answer whether he likes it or doesn't. I'd imagine he doesn't because of how hard they worked this season to the Lakers to be such a good team. I can't imagine he'd be happy throwing that all away. Obviously, Damian Lillard, even a player whose team isn't in the playoffs right now. They're in the playoff race, but they're not even in the playoffs, and he still said, that he wants the season to return, and he said he would not be happy if there was a schedule change for when the season starts. He wants it to be September, which I think makes sense. The return, I think, I am hopeful that the season will resume and there'll just be a later start to next season, because I think what some players have done this season is truly amazing and shouldn't be just thrown away. That was the season that got canceled halfway through. I think players like Giannis, who him along with the other Bucks players have led the Bucks to the best record in the league and possibly even getting to 70 wins. They could have done that, and that would just be thrown away. Obviously, the Lakers creating an amazing season, gets thrown away. I think for the top teams, it would almost be similar to Liverpool. It would be a crime to just throw that away. I think for the lower teams, it would be amazing for them. Like the Warriors, they tank a pointless season, get a good pick, come back next season with Clay, Steph, and a top, at least lottery pick, possibly in the top 5. I think for them that would be amazing, and other lower teams that would be amazing. Throw away the bad season, start fresh kind of thing. But I think for the good teams, especially teams like the Thunder or that's my main example, the Thunder. Teams that came out of nowhere and really grinded to get to the playoffs. Not in it yet, but they've fought to be where they are and can still make the playoffs and make noise. I think it'd be hard for them to just throw that away, kind of thing. And then especially teams who are just, going for it this year, trading for big pieces, going for the win, going for that championship this year. It'd be really hard to just throw that away. I think now moving on to college players declaring for the draft. There's a few guys who have declared. Just going to finish up here. Trey Jones has declared for the draft, the Duke guy. Mostly Duke guys I'm going to cover right now. Trey Jones and Vernon Carey have both declared for the draft, which, is expected. I didn't expect either of them to come back. It would have been nice for Trey to stay. It would have been nice for Carey to stay. But Duke's getting a really nice class next year, so it won't hurt too bad. And I think Trey and Vernon could be very good on an NBA team. I don't think their ceiling is crazy high. They're no Zion. They're no John Morant. But I think there would be great role pieces, or possibly, starting 5 material on a team. Trey Jones gives you defense, amazing defense. He won ACC Player of the Year and ACC Defensive Player of the Year, so he brings that experience. He's playing college in 2 years now is experience. He brings that experience of loss in the playoffs and you've seen he has the clutch gene, especially in the North Carolina game when he hits the shot to send it to overtime. you see he can come through in those moments. I think that's one of the biggest things he got out of it, is he was able to, even though the season was cut short, we saw in a few games that he can really pull it off in the clutch. I think he'd be valuable on almost any team. He can shoot, not amazing, but he can shoot, he can pass, he can defend. What team wouldn't want that? As far as Vernon Carey goes, he's another one of those guys. He's a big guy who can rebound for you, he can dunk, he can finish. He even has a bit of a shot. I think he fits in today's NBA very well. He can shoot, but he's a bruiser. I think it's possible a guy like him could actually do pretty well on a team if he develops a good enough post game and keeps his jumper strong. He'd be a nice piece to go with the guard. I think that's why him and Trey Jones actually worked really well at Duke, because they had that kind of chemistry going. But that's most of the news I have for today. Stay safe, wash your hands, use hand sanitizer, don't touch your face, social distance. I'll see you next time.